Welcome to Behind the Ops, the podcast where we uncover the systems, strategies, and mindset that turn vision into real, scalable impact. Today's guest, Dr. Sera Lavelle, is not just a clinical psychologist. She's a founder redefining what mental wellness can look like when science meets scale. She runs 2 thriving practices in New York City and is co-founder and CEO of Be a Better Eating, an AI-powered platform helping people heal their relationship with food, not through diets or restrictions, but through understanding, compassion, and clinical psychology. Sera's work lives at the intersection of health, tech, and humanity. She's challenging the extremes of the diet culture, filling the gaps between the therapy and tech, and proving that accessibility and evidence-based care can coexist. Under her leadership, Bia has already launched with thousands of users, a hospital pilot, and a community driven by purpose, not perfection. In this conversation, we explore what it takes to build something meaningful from the ground up, the operations behind scaling empathy, the leadership it takes to grow teams that deeply care, and the systems that allow mission-driven work to thrive sustainably. This is Behind the Ops, and today we're going behind the scenes with Dr. Sera Lavelle, a founder transforming the future of mental health and the way we think about food, feelings, and human growth. Hi, Dr. Lavelle. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks so much for having me and yourself.
Oh, thank you so much. Thanks for coming on. I appreciate it. So with Behind the Ops, we like to talk about ops, but let's start by setting the stage. Why don't we talk a little bit about kind of where you are, where you've been, where you're going, and kind of where ops fits into your world at the moment?
I mean, I guess where I am, where I'm going, all over the place. Yeah. So, I started my journey as a clinical psychologist. I grew my 2
Nice.
therapy practices. I love my therapy practices. And the biggest thing with operations was actually teaching somebody to take over the operations of the therapy practice for
Sure.
me so that I can transition into my new role as CEO and co-founder of the app I'm creating. And it's interesting looking at the operations of how a therapy practice works, moving into kind of a completely different world, now creating an app and building a different kind of team that I'm used to.
That's for sure. So what are you finding are some of the operational differences? Obviously, there's a ton, right? Everyone knows it's running a therapy practice is very,
Yeah.
very different than building an AI app. But what are some of the operating structures that you're seeing very differently across the board between the two?
It's so night and day. I mean, first of all, so much about operations is the people that you're working with, right? And it's so
For
different
sure.
working in a world where people are therapists. Their role is therapist. They love therapy. They love,
Right.
and in with a therapy practice, so much of the operational piece
Right.
is, connecting with patients, making sure they're appropriate for the practice, making sure if there's risk or if they're going through something severe, like, making sure maybe we're not the right resource and referring them out. So much about our operational practices are about HIPAA, patient safety, making
Right.
sure people feel seen and heard, and also legal, anything that goes along with
Right.
medical. Operations here, it's, it just wild such a difference it is. It's some of it is more talking to the social media people, the marketing people, and that's somewhat similar to my therapy practices. But now one of our developers splits his time between Denmark and Singapore. Another is actually from Poland but lives in Taiwan, so we're dealing with different time frames.
Sure.
I'm not used to not being the person to run something. I'm used to any therapist in my practice. I've been in their role before. I know how to do their role. I
Right.
don't know how to do a developer's role. And kind of trusting like our fractional CTO and our tech advisors to kind of run that when when I'm so used to having such a thorough understanding of everything being done in the company and having to kind of trust, like, hey, you are the experts in this. You know how it runs. Even setting up like sprints is so different than setting up ongoing projects, right? Or like ongoing therapy with therapists. Everything's
Absolutely.
night and day.
So talk us through that a little bit. How do you start to, as someone who is clearly a driver, who's been there, done that, right? Like you said, you pretty much did every role in the practice, and then you're walking into a world where you're not really sure what your role is, even let alone how to do any of the other roles. How do you learn to trust that? What are the measures or metrics? And maybe they aren't hard, fast rules, but tell us a little bit about how you're starting to gauge that. What's that look like?
Yeah, like a company culture is something I think a lot about, right? And I always thought that the company culture has to come so top down. but you're really you want to create a different company culture that fits the people in the environment as well. Like
Sure.
one company as a whole might really like systematic. We meet every time, like the same time every week.
Okay.
Um, the main thing when you're thinking about operations that's so different is having a co-founder. Um, I'm used to being a solo founder,
Right.
and
Right.
your co-founding relationship, it's a marriage. And you don't want a partner who's too similar to you. You don't
Right.
want a partner who's different. And I feel very fortunate that I have a co-founder that, we divide and conquer and our skill sets are just so complementary.
That's
And, but co-leading is very different than leading, right?
right. Absolutely. So when you're doing when you're ju so I guess, how are you structuring your operations so that you have some, is it just meetings? Is it just conversations? Are there not,
Mhm.
reports, but dashboards and KPIs that you're using to help kind of measure those things?
Well, because it's a startup, a lot of it is just going to be kind of gathering the feedback in the regular meetings, right? But also kind of trusting the team. When you have a co-founder, you're taking on these different hats, right? And so right now, in a small team, you have to sit there and think, okay, what is my role? What is my co-founder's role? And sometimes you don't even know, and you want to make sure you're not you want to make sure nobody's doing the double work, right?
Right.
And that there are no kind of gaps. And when you're still in the startup phase, as opposed to thinking of like, do you have the KPIs? It's right now, it's all about communication. You
Okay.
know, it's about making sure you're meeting with everybody, checking in, seeing how people are feeling, and making sure you're kind of having these, you know, that you're differentiating what are product strategy sessions when we meet as
Mhm.
a team, right? And this is something that was a little bumpy for us at first, right?
Sure.
Um, I'm a therapist. I'm used to just processing,
Right.
right? Like, but you need time that it's like, hey, look, not that we don't have time for people's opinions, but like, or like ideas, but it's kind of like, hey, let's make sure we're setting the tone that this meeting is we're getting stuff done. This is a sprint.
Sure.
We're not going to talk about ideas. We're not going to introduce any new ideas. We're going to focus on status updates, what the next milestones are, right? And then the alternate meeting with the whole team is going to be okay, what have we learned from this sprint? How are we feeling about it? What we'd like to see more of? What's working, what's not? And kind of constantly regrouping. But by making the space for the time that you can kind of all brainstorm, it actually helps to keep the other meetings more efficient.
Absolutely. So I think it's funny because part of, my background is, I came out of the tech space, and so the tech went through a huge change in methodology when it went from a waterfall technology, which is more what you're talking about on the therapy side, right? It's,
Yeah.
this is the goal and this is how we're going to get there. This is the goal and this is how we get there. Versus now, a lot of technology is more agile, which is what you're talking about with this, which is all around the, the do a little, get somewhere, do a little, measure, do a little review, do a little, get back to the, and then define. And so there's a lot of validity in both, I think.
Mhm.
But I think it's very different. So I totally understand how that operating model kind of has changed for you. Tell me a little bit about something that you've learned or you like either better or worse, or you learned and now you're kind of copacetic with both on kind of on that operating model, going from what we'll call a waterfall to the agile methodology.
Yeah, well, at the end of the day, therapists are going to see patients, and it's kind of every week's going to kind of be the same. There's not a project, there's not a deliverable, right?
Right.
I mean, I might have my outside projects of like how I want to see the practice grow, right? And it could be like, hey, now I want these checks and balances in place. Now, hey, I want to open a different practice. Now I want to do that. But I could do those things at my own time, right?
Right. For sure.
But my staff, like, and all the therapists in the practice, they're not involved in those things. Those are outside of them, right? So there's no kind of like big deliverable to the outside world of like, hey, we as a team need to get this done. There are
Mhm.
things that like me and the people on the operations team are putting in place. Um, but most of our staff, like most of the people in the practices, that's kind of outside of them, right?
Yeah.
Now we have to think of, okay, like I'm super excited. We're getting into the next phase of our product. Like um, you know, uh, first you always start with the MVP, right? Just get the basic product out.
Sure.
Now we're building out our dashboard and like, gathering the feedback and doing all the things we need to do for that? And thinking in terms of like, okay, well, we need to hit these milestones. How do I need to motivate the people around us to reach those milestones? What kind of check-ins do those people need? Um, is it going to be more important to just kind of what personality type is going to be like, okay, just get it done, get it done, get it done once the update.
Right.
What personality type would be like, leave me alone, just let me do it, and kind of alternating that, right?
I'm sure.
Also, the value of speaking the same language. I think having somebody as a CTO who knows how to communicate their requirements, working alongside my co-founder who's the product lead,
Right.
um, I think it makes such a difference, right? I know how to communicate to the people that work for me in the therapy practice, right? I know what motivates a therapist on average. I know how they think. I know what their work looks like. However, even if I have an idea of how to explain something in my app, the language I use wouldn't be the same way the developers would understand the language.
Right.
And so understanding that person, that CTO role is almost like a translator in some level, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. And then being able to communicate that, and then how often, my co-founder and I kind of like all get together with the entire team versus getting together with just the CTO to kind of get the updates that they can communicate, and figuring out that rhythm is very different.
Absolutely. Oh my goodness, yeah. So one of the things that I have worked on in pretty much most of the companies that I work with, we do the customer journey map. So we look at the customer. What is that customer journey map? So have you done that with the new app, and what does that look like? What are some of the things you learned from that?
Yeah, so I have to say, because my co-founder is on the product side, she's really like, I love having her as a co-founder because this is, that's her language,
Sure.
like being like the UX UI, like getting the feedback. But then we also approach it from different angles of how we get the feedback,
Hmm.
because it's both in our wheelhouse. I come with a background of psychology. I also come back from the background of marketing research back in the day. She comes from really on the tech side, the user testing, the experience, getting the feedback from the users. I like doing both and coming together and working together, right? So
Sure.
she'll get more formalized feedback from the users, what they like, what they don't like. I get a lot of informal feedback. I have 35 interns right now that I'm
Wow.
managing.
Oh my
So
goodness. That's a lot of work.
we talk about kind of operations. Are we talking about building the product, or the role that I take on as the CEO of how do I manage my own time and
Right.
kind of like the team of getting the word out and the marketing? And um, so I have 35 interns. They started last week. So we've been working together for a while, because so much of our audience and our primary users are college age. It's a prime time for people to be struggling with emotional eating. And we want to get those people before it turns into a full blown eating disorder.
Sure.
And the people who use the app tend to be more tech savvy. There are a lot of things that make our primary users in that 18 to 25 range. Um,
Okay.
so when thinking about getting the word out and wanting to be scrappy as a startup, I was like, how do I get out the word to college students? Oh, well, let's get the target market marketing to the target market, right?
What a good idea.
Exactly, right? So one of the things we do in our weekly meetings with the interns is, so how the interns work is they're all BIA ambassadors. They represent different universities throughout the country, and they're going around with business cards with different QRs to test different slogans. And they're going around to yoga studios, health food stores, like their campus, like a number of places, just talking about BIA, putting out business cards, and like really doing it like in this grassroots type of way. But then it serves a lot of purpose because it's connecting with a lot of universities. Then they're introducing me to a lot of the wellness programs at the universities to kind of
That's
create it
great.
that way. And then on top of it, they are a great sounding board. So in our meetings, I ask them, what would you want to see in it?
Right.
Right? Like, and it could be a little bit informal and unfiltered. And then I can take it back and we can compare it with my co-founder, who's going to be doing very systematic data driven and on the users, versus like more of that kind of qualitative, let's let you freeform, prompt people to speak in an open way. and just kind of throw in ideas. And then the two of us could work together. And as my co-founder is creating the dashboard, I can kind of give the feedback and we can work together then to say, hey, how do we collectively want this product to serve our patients? I come in from the clinical side. She comes from it from the design and user experience side.
Right, which is that's a great way to do things. I mean, it's certainly a phenomenal combination of skill sets, and it blends, obviously. So tell me, let's stay a little bit with the interns, right? So how are you finding, again, the cultures of a very more practical, stringent, strict practice has a culture, and then this is a little more free formed and a little more um, agile, because we're using that word today, right? So a little more agile. So how are you finding those two cultures, and how are you finding getting the right people? What's again, measure and metrics, or operationally, what are you looking at to make sure that you had the right people in your practice, but now in this new world, what does that look like?
Well, in some ways, it's more familiar for me, than working with the developers, right? It's
Sure.
they're all psychology students, so they're kind of like little junior psychologists, and I love being a professor, and I miss that. So I find them so inspiring. How first of all, I got the 35 interns is, and this is something I often do. I had 350 people apply to the job
Wow.
to work for free. And it's amazing because I was like, so my first screening is always, I don't mind giving people a little hoop to jump over, right? So the first thing I said is when 350 people applied, I kind of wrote a response saying, tell me, confirm you want to do this for free, confirm you could commit to this many hours, and write me a paragraph about why you want to do this. And it was like, after that, a lot of people dropped off. They didn't even respond. Right? But that's what you
Yeah.
want. That's what you want.
Right.
You do that before you're committed to even spending 15 minutes interviewing them. From there, I interviewed people. Um, and then, I can monitor the progress by the QR codes as well. So as they're
Okay.
going out to places and they're scanning QR codes, we're able to assign things to kind of track, like, are you really going out to places? Or are you just
Neat.
saying you are? Um, and I have people kind of pair up and accountability in that aspect. And then I also have a big Slack project management system in place.
Okay.
So I have two different kind of interns, the ambassador, but then I also have social media interns. And I create a project plan in Slack. I always like to wait to see who's going to be, even when you take on a lot of interns, I'd like to see who's going to rise to the top and that you could tell is a leader. And then I kind of have that person be more in charge of kind of the other interns. And, the constant communication with Slack. I like using Slack as a project management tool personally.
Yeah.
Because you could set up the boards, the social media calendar, and then, you're assigning this task to a person, it's easy to ping them. It makes it really seamless.
That's fantastic. And the tracking on that is fairly easy. It's an interesting thing, really getting into project management, which is, I think, something that a lot of entrepreneurs need some help with, is that
Yeah.
project management skill set. Where did you kind of come into that? Was it trial by fire, or was it something that you had learned from a more academic perspective?
I wish a PhD in clinical psychology does not teach you project management. I give very different tools for people I'm managing than for myself. And I think every entrepreneur is that way because I might need to spend a few hours pitching investors. I might need to be working on a presentation for something else. I might be doing a lecture. Somebody's invited me to speak somewhere. I have a podcast, and you have to really organize your time to make sure, like internal project management for me is very different than the projects because you know, most people are in one role and they have one project.
Right.
Any CEO who's an entrepreneur, it's kind of all over the place. And I'm
For
a big
sure.
fan of having long-term goals, breaking it up to what I want to get done this week, and then breaking it up to what I want to get done this day. And spending that half an hour every morning, looking at the chunks of time you have between things and saying, actually being intentional about what you're filling up those chunks with. I also
Sure.
wake up at 5 a.m. and that helps a lot because it's before kids are up and anybody's the emails come in, the kids are
Yeah.
up, the husband, the
Yes.
dog.
Yes. Yeah. There's a book. I don't know if you've read it, the 5 a.m. Club, and it's a great book. It's not going to change your life, but it's really exciting and it's fun and it makes you feel not so weird when you're a 5 a.m.er, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think most of the people probably have kids, the 5 a.m.ers.
Yes, exactly. We take that 1 hour that we can at least keep it
1 hour.
quiet, right? Focus and enjoy our coffee or tea or whatever in the morning.
Yeah.
So looking back at kind of the practice and looking at the future of your app, what are some of the things you've learned that you think as an entrepreneur, if I had just known this thing either at the practice or now, or I learned it at the practice and I'm applying it now, what are some of the things that a lesson you could offer?
So I don't think I'm alone in this. When you start out as an entrepreneur, as a company, you want to give everybody everything, like everybody everything, right?
Sure.
Because I genuinely love the people I work with. And it took me a long time to realize by giving everybody promotions, giving everybody raises, giving, you're actually not making it fair for the people who are working harder than the
Sure.
others. And also, you know, it felt wrong to say, hey, I want to make sure my company's profitable. That took personally, that was something that was hard for me. It was like, oh,
Okay.
I just thought I had to break even, or instead of realizing actually, if your company's profitable, you're going to be able to give people raises, you're going to be able to get loans, and having to kind of overcome this. Um, I started a practice. I knew nothing about business. I started my practice while I was doing my PhD program as a side hustle.
Right.
And, so you're just kind of trying, I put some bonus structures in place that were not set up to scale and almost killed my company because I was overpaying somebody so much, not realizing we'd grow
Um,
so quickly. So I feel like all the mistakes that I made, I feel like just make it me such a business owner, putting in rating systems. Um, Also, I love the idea of matching people's ambitions and strengths with their career path, not just saying, hey, there's one career path and you have to go for it or not be
sure.
here, and
Sure.
balancing that with the needs of the company.
Love that. Tell me a little bit more about that, Dr. Lavelle. And what are some of the things that you looked at to say, Kristen's is actually more on a business trajectory than a therapist trajectory, or Susie's is on a therapist trajectory and she needs to run a practice someday. So how do you kind of assess that, and what are you looking at to kind of view those people in the career paths?
Yeah, it's interesting. Now that you say that, like, I feel like launching a separate company forced me to put more systems in place in my original company.
I'm sure it did.
Really, because I was sitting there thinking, I'm like, I need to get more hands off. There's only one of me.
Yeah,
And I got a fractional operations person and a fractional HR person to really help me put those systems in place.
sure,
So, for instance, when we're rating therapists, you know, you're rating them on, do you in addition to their clinical skills, are they getting all their administration stuff on time? Do they get confused by the legal? Are they, are they doing well in those areas? But you know what? They're not so passionate about these other things. That
sure.
person's ready. So we have a full rating system that I don't
Wow.
want to be dogmatic and I don't like it to be about numbers, right?
Right. Right.
Right. Not just like, hey, did you see the most patients? But there is something to be like, hey, are you doing a good job with those patients? And are you managing your availability?
Right.
Okay. Right. Or,
Sure.
and are you choosing enough specialties? Are you continuing on your education? Right. So in our practice, we have two main career paths people can take. After their clinical psychologists done the clinical work, they're kind of ready to advance in the company. We have
Hmm.
one path that's a supervision path, and that's going to be more of the administrative aspects, right? And you're guiding the more junior clinicians how to make timelines, how to train the people below you, how to get them assimilated in the practice. The other
Right.
path is the specialist path. So, for instance, a specialist path might be um, the best example is I had one therapy practice. One of the people in my practice is like, you know what? This form of therapy doesn't really resonate with me. And I said, you're a great clinician. I
Right.
love having you as a colleague. Well, what does resonate with you? She said EMDR. she took off with it and was so great with it. We actually opened a second practice just devoted to that, and now she runs that practice. So
Wow.
I've been bringing out the best in people, and that would be a specialist path. You have an idea that you bring to me that you're so passionate about, like something. I look at it and say, hey, could this be a niche? And that person then will be the expert in that form of therapy and develop a training program below them for the therapist below them so that they are really experts in that.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. I think that's something that any entrepreneur could certainly take. I mean, I would think that they could take that lesson, which says, help me build the practice, help me build the company, help me build the whatever it is by giving back to the team, around you, below you, coming on, whatever the words you want to use. So I think that's a phenomenal model, and that's really interesting. How would you see that? And I know you're still in startup mode, and you probably don't even have job titles at this point. But as you start to grow the new company, how do you think that'll apply? How might you apply that?
Well, in a lot of the different aspects, right? So, first of all, right now we're an interactive app for emotional eating. We're not treating eating disorders.
Right.
Only 2 to 3% of the population has eating disorders, but I'd rather get to the 57% of people who say, I struggle with food on some level. Because right
Okay.
now, what's going on is people are becoming more aware that this is psychological. So, 5 years ago, in my practice, people would say, call us up and say, hey, I have bulimia. Could you help me? And we'd say, of course. You have a diagnosis. We specialize in bulimia. You can come in. I
Sure.
started noticing several years ago, people would say, hey, I binged on a box of cookies last night and I feel miserable. Could I come in? And we'd actually have to say, I'm sorry, but you don't meet diagnostic criteria. Insurance isn't going to cover this. And you can't just
Oh,
fudge
wow.
a diagnosis to get somebody help.
Right.
And the reason I started this app really was because of this big market niche. So you now have, it's estimated, Project Heal did a huge study that said up to 43% of people seeking therapy for food are turned away for not being sick enough. And so
Oh,
why? And it's kind of like, wait till you have a disorder, then come back. Right?
right.
Go on this diet app. Okay, now you have a disorder, you can be treated. Um, so right now I'm operating within the wellness space because I want to reach those people, and my app could prevent eating disorders and heal a relationship with food. But it'd be the person who's like, look, I know what to eat, but every day when I'm stressed, I eat those cookies, or every day when I'm stressed, which is most people, right?
Sure.
Where do
Of
those people
course.
need help? Calorie counting is not going to help that.
No.
Really, you want therapy techniques. The same techniques that work for binge eating disorder work for everyday binging, even if it's not clinically diagnosable. So, right now, it's within the wellness space. And we're very clear for a number of reasons, ethical considerations.
Of
And
course.
so you can talk to it all day. But the next phase, we're actually going to use more of the model for, I don't know if you know Headspace and Bend Health. They have a great model that you get
Headspace.
a bit of, yeah. Well, they get it like when it's a Headspace Health, they've gotten more into the medical.
Okay.
And it's kind of like an analysis when you first start chatting with the app. And I'll say, hey, this is either wellness, you don't meet any criteria. We'll pair you with a coach who could give you basic tools. However, they're supervised by psychologists. So if a person, even if it's like emotional eating, but it's not bulimia, they can go through the app paired with a coach, right? So they have the AI at all times plus a coach that they check in with. If it's
Nice.
eating disordered, I'm actually going to be pairing it with live telehealth therapist at that point. So I'll be scaling a huge therapy network for that. And the nice thing about doing this way is in a traditional therapy setting, the second somebody gets better with bulimia, you can say in remission for a certain amount of time before insurance is like, sorry, you're no longer disordered. And
Hmm.
again, then it's come back when you're sick again.
Right.
This, when you're pairing it with an app, they could do the step down and stay in the wellness tier. That then would be preventative so they don't keep relapsing into it. So
Wow.
when it gets back into that space, I'm going to be running it a lot like I do my therapy practice. Anybody who enters my therapy practice goes into a training, like they're already PhDs or PsyDs, but they go through an intensive training where they rotate around every therapist in the practice to learn their styles and insights, as well as having books that we have them read, specific trainings through national organizations. We want them to be the best of the best. So when we get to that point, there was like scaling our coaching practice and the therapy practice, it is going to
Sure.
work a lot the same.
Right. Which is incredible that you can kind of see that coming, because that's a perfect segue into one of the things I was going to ask is, what do you see for the scalability, right? How do you see this scaling? Again, I know it's a startup, but you were a single therapist that built a practice, you scaled that. What do you see as some of the scalabilities for this? And again, lessons learned. How do you see those translating?
Every entrepreneur thinks it's going to be huge. Of course, I
Of
think it's going to
course.
be huge. I mean, when I really look at the numbers of people who use diet apps, 55% of Americans are attempting to lose weight every year,
Sure.
right? It's more than half of the adult population. Um, if I can get just a very small percentage of those people struggling with emotional eating, it would beat out the Nooms, the MyFitnessPals, and it would be reimbursable by insurance when it's covered as well.
Sure.
Um, so I do see this as being a up there that people know calm, they know headspace, they'll know be a better eating. I see this being kind of the go-to tool. As society is shifting away from diet culture anyways, I'm riding that wave and providing something as an alternative to diet culture, but also for all the people getting off of GLP-1s.
Right.
Um, I'm not against GLP-1s by any means. However, people aren't going to stay on them forever. 85% of people drop off. And once they lost the weight, a lot of times they're lost. Like, now what? Um,
Sure.
and then they can kind of tackle the deeper issues and then do something that's sustainable.
So so all of that, I'm 100% with you. I think it absolutely will work. How does that look from a business perspective, from an ops perspective? Do you have the measure and metrics in place? Do you have the process and procedures in place, or are we working towards that to get to a point and then figure out growth from there?
I would say we're already starting putting those operations in place, but it's going to be a step-by-step process, right?
Sure.
Like, the first is getting the dashboard complete and making the product itself everything we want. Next year, I'm going to be starting the foundation for the scalable therapy practice. What I mean is, I'll be opening up a fourth practice devoted just to eating, paired with the app, with
Wow.
higher level psychologists. But they would serve as the foundation. Those higher level psychologists could then be the supervisors for both the kind of more newly trained or mental health counselors, or even you could use postdocs at that point. And, for the people who need therapy, and they could also then be supervising the coaches as well. So,
Great.
these are all part of the plan, but you do have to do things kind of one step at a time. And it's different
Absolutely.
starting with the product first and then going to therapy practice as opposed to vice versa.
Right. No, for sure. That's amazing. So, Dr. Sarah, we've had an amazing time. I've had a ball. I've learned so much from you. What's your parting lesson to any entrepreneur trying to figure out ops, trying to figure out scale, who the heck they are? I don't know. Tell me what you tell them.
Yeah, so I'd have to say, you know, it's okay to be sloppy at first, and I think it's the only way you can. And then after throwing enough spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks, then you could start to put together the plan for the operations with flexibility. And then, like, I think there's something to be said about, like, each step and each bigger you get, it's the operations are just going to be different. There are
Sure.
times that it has to be scrappy and you're trying things, and then there are times that you're like, okay, let's take a pause, reset, and put systems into place for this next chapter, knowing they're probably going to change again at that next kind of growing pain.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And thank you for that. I think they forget that you don't have to be perfect, right? The building a business is absolutely agile. It is not waterfall.
Mhm.
So I think that's a great lesson for people. So I appreciate you. Thank you so much for your time today.
Yeah, thank you. And great questions. I love
Thanks.
appreciate it. Thank you.
Oh, good. Well, thank you so much. And thanks for your honesty. It was phenomenal.
Thank you.